This is the final word on CNN Philippines. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rico Hizon. She is the first to file her certificate of candidacy for the 2022 elections last Friday, October 1st. Loren Legarda is seeking a Senate comeback with a 20-year congressional experience under her belt. She's ready to roll up her sleeves again, this time against the backdrop of a pandemic, plus tons of other environmental issues which she advocates. Up close now, tonight, on The Final Word with former Senator Loren Legarda. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. The Philippines is one of the weakest, if not the weakest country in fighting COVID in a lot of recent surveys. Tell us, how would you manage the health crisis differently if you were elected again in the Senate?
Well, first of all, Rico, I'm running not for an executive position, but in a lawmaking position. That's in the legislature, right? So we craft the budget. For next year's budget, it should be a pandemic recovery budget. We should institutionalize healthcare services up to the last mile, up to the last barangay. So we should really upgrade the health services in provincial hospitals, even if healthcare is devolved. And I believe that the pandemic recovery, Rico, is not just for the healthcare of Filipinos, but also for the economic recovery of every Filipino family. So two tracks yan. We should make sure that we protect our people by providing in the GAA, the General Appropriations Act, and we are presently discussing the annual budget for next year, it should have sufficient vaccines as well as the boosters and the vaccines as well for those below 18 years old, for our children. And we must also be prepared to be able to help the poorest Filipino families who have been adversely affected by the pandemic to be able to rise. In short, the pandemic recovery is both a health issue and a jobs issue. And I believe that the government programs already in existence, for example, the 4P families, there's around 4 million of them. There's a sustainable livelihood program, a very good livelihood pangkabuhayan program. And the budget of this should be greatly increased so that we provide the wherewithal, the resources for our people, for the poorest Filipino families na umahon sa panahon ng pandemya. Maski sila'y hindi na COVID, kung wala naman trabaho at hindi matutulungan para magkaroon ng suporta sa kanilang mga micro-enterprises, ay maghihirap pa rin ang Pilipino.
That's right.
So, to summarize what I just said, it would be two tracks. It would be health recovery through vaccines and the upgrading of health facilities, and economic recovery through existing government programs, not just the SLP of the DSWD, but also, let's say, Dole Pangkabuhayan, let's say the DTI's shared services facilities, the DOST's CEST, Science and Technology for Community Empowerment. There's so many good programs. And I know, Rico, because I was chairman of the Committee on Finance from 2015 to 2019. And these were very important micro-enterprise programs of government that really capacitated the poorest Filipinos and even the middle class. And that is what we need to do now. And that is what I'm doing as a representative. But my influence on the budget is very limited because I'm no longer the chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance. But if I were, I would focus on health recovery and, of course, pangkabuhayan, livelihood.
Key points that you have really that you've mentioned, Congresswoman Legarda. If you become senator again next year, that will really hope to turn around the economy in 2022 and beyond. You have always advocated for the environment. Let me ask you your take on several issues. Briefly, give us an answer on these 4 points. One is the Dolomite Beach. How do you plan to address that?
Oh, I think I wholeheartedly agree with the UP Marine Science Institute on their findings. And the resources could have been placed elsewhere. In fact, as author of Republic Act 9003, which is the Ecological Solid Waste Management Law, and as chairman of the Committee on Finance, I provided the resources for the implementation of NCR Regions 3 and 4A so that all the LGUs around Manila Bay would follow the institutionalization of the segregation of waste at source, recycling, and composting until such time that we actually follow this law strictly and effectively. Any beautification or aesthetics on white sand and all of this, which can come later, pero importante, wag magtapon ng basura, infectious waste, human waste, rather the resources could have been placed elsewhere. But since it's there, but I know that it's been washed away, at least a part of it, I believe.
Yes. So what about the lifting the ban on mining permits?
There definitely is the need to revisit the 1995 Mining Act. That's quite old. And the lifting, we must ensure that the local communities receive their due share, their just share of the extraction of their natural resources in the respective areas. We must also ensure that the rehabilitation fund that is enshrined in the Mining Act is also implemented and done. We know that there are millions of people reliant on mining. And so first, revisit the law and ensure that the local communities benefit. And it's important that environment impact assessment, that the environment clearance certificates and rehabilitation are done, and that the people don't suffer. The environment is so rich, but why are the sources in mining areas, the people are still very poor? So there's a disconnect here. So a revisit of the law is urgent, is much needed now.
Another controversial issue, Congresswoman Loren, building casinos on Boracay. Should this continue or should this be stopped?
If it were me, I would not. I would want to keep Boracay as a haven for nature and culture. Remember, some of the lands in Boracay had indigenous peoples and the locals there. It would be great if we would have both the tangible and intangible heritage of our indigenous people, the Atis of Boracay. I am from that jurisdiction in the neighboring province of Antique. And it may not be in my district, that's in the neighboring province, in Aklan, but if it were up to me, I would not have gambling in that island paradise. I would take better care of sewage. I would take better care of water. I would ensure ecological solid waste management so that the disaster that happened some years back and they had to close it down because of overuse and the seepage of dirt into the coliform level would not happen again. We must nurture nature and take care of nature, Rico, because when we do, nature will take care of us.
Another environmental problem, the waste disposal, during and after the pandemic.
That's why the 2001 law, Rico, is so important. If we look at the Republic Act 9003, where we look at the provisions, everything is there of the segregation, how you treat infectious waste, how we can segregate waste at source and divert as much as 70 to 80% of the waste in the household level so that only a small portion of the waste will actually be brought to environmentally engineered sanitary landfill. I admit that there's so much waste because of the pandemic, all the masks and all of these, but then it should be treated before it is disposed of in a sanitary manner. So it's very basic. It should start in the household. And we have the laws that in place, although really complying with it during the pandemic is a challenge. But if there are barangays and local governments, Rico, that follow it, and 1/4 of our population follows 9003. Why can't the other half or 75%, even if just one household is able to do it, why are we not able to do it for the rest? So I
Congresswoman?
never lose hope. I am certain that as
Right.
long as there's clear IEC, information, education, communication, and resources are given towards the strict implementation of our laws for the environment, we will be able to educate people. And the young people of
Congresswoman?
today are very environmentally conscious. I felt a lone voice in the wilderness in the 1980s and 90s, Rico. But it had to take, sadly,
Yeah.
but in a way, fortunately, the pandemic for people to open their mind, their hearts, their souls to caring for nature. And marami akong kakampi, yung mga millennials ngayon, they're climate champions and climate warriors, ecological warriors, and I'm happy that I have really a big brigade of
Yeah.
environmentalists now.
Congresswoman?
Unfortunately, it had to take the pandemic.
Congresswoman, we will just take this short break, but we will continue our discussion right after this with former Senator Loren Legarda on the final word on CNN Philippines. And up close and personal conversation with former Senator Loren Legarda. Senator Legarda, this particular portion, you just have to answer with a yes or a no. These are 6 questions on very important issues that the Filipino people want to know about. Here's the first question with just an answer of yes or no. Do you favor easier public access to the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth of the President, Vice President, and members of Congress?
Yes.
Do you support?
No reasons? No reasons, just yes or no.
Yes
Okay,
or no?
Yes.
Yes. Do you support lifting foreign ownership limits in the Constitution?
No, but there are different industries, Rico. So I'll just say no, but I'll explain it on my Facebook page.
Do you favor?
Because there's certain industries which can be lifted, right? Okay.
Yes.
But it's mahirap yung, it's very general, but for the sake of complying with your requirements, no.
No.
But there are certain industries na pwede. Pero sabi mo, yes or no lang, no na lang muna. Papaliwanag ko sa Facebook page.
That's right, Senator. Do you favor the reimposition of the death penalty for drug-related crimes?
No.
Should a
I am
sitting
not in favor
president
of a death penalty.
be allowed to
I'm sorry.
run for vice president in the next election?
Should the
Should the
president be
should the
allowed?
sitting president be allowed to run for vice president in the next election?
There is no ban, but if you were to ask my opinion, no. But nothing, it's allowed. But if you ask my opinion, no.
Out of delicadeza.
For whatever reason, I would actually say let the people decide. But you're asking my opinion. And my opinion, even if it is not banned and it is legally allowed, but my personal opinion is no.
Do you favor resuming peace talks with the communist rebels?
Of course, yes.
Yes.
I've always been part of humanitarian missions and advisor to the peace process for the past 20 years.
Should the country be more aggressive in protecting its maritime interests in the West Philippine Sea?
Yes.
And my
I
final
wish I
question,
could explain all my answers.
you're on your Facebook page.
Yes, I'd like to explain all my answers. It's unfair that you only give me 3 or 2 letters to answer. Some are general, and you can
Yes.
say yes in certain industries and lifting the constitutional ban on foreign ownership, but the others
Right.
could be allowed. But never mind, I comply with Rico Hizon.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Loren. And he was your colleague in the Senate from 2010 to 2016. Your thoughts on Bongbong Marcos running for president? You can explain yourself here because critics say it's an insult to the victims of martial law and the generation of Filipinos who are paying for the sins of the Marcos regime.
I think anyone can run for any office in the country. And Senator Bongbong Marcos, my former colleague, should and would be able to answer all the issues, whether it's martial law or human rights issues and many more. And it would be, I'm sure, brought out during the campaign, and it would be good to listen to all these debates and all the issues that will be brought to the fore.
And let the people be the judge.
Let the people decide.
Senator Loren Legarda, thank you so much for joining us on the Final Words Up Close segment.
Thank you very much, Rico.